Hi guys, it's your girl. No, I never say it's your girl. I never say that. That's not my thing. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Merveille, not Marvel, not Malvin, not Melville, not Malvern, not what else do I get? Not Mervin, and certainly not Captain Marvin. It's Merveille. Merveille. My name is Merveille. Get it? Got it. Okay, you guys, my name is Merveille. Welcome to my channel. So I did promise that I would incorporate more medical related school videos in my channel, and today I'll be answering the most common question that I get on my DMs. So, what is it like studying medicine in China? How is it different from other medical schools? Let me just make a video about it, and I hope this video will answer most of your questions, and if it does not, please DM me. I do not mind your DM, it does not bother me, and I will make another video about other questions or most questions that I get. Because I would just like to put a disclaimer out there that this is my opinion and mine alone. This opinion is not related to every medical student in China or every medical school in China. It's just about my personal experience, and I don't think everyone's experience is the same, and I don't think everyone has the same story, but I do hope that this video can help you guys get a little information or just give you a little insight on how studying medicine in China really is. So I'm currently in my internship year, rotation year, electives, clerkship, however you want to call it. So I do consider myself a little bit eligible enough to know a thing or two or even three about me. With that being said, I think I will break down this video into three different parts, and the first one would have to be picking a medical school in China and accredited university and all those shenanigans. The second one would be my own study method and what I do to get the most of all the medical knowledge that I can acquire, and the third one would have to be, is it worth it? Is it worth it, and what's the quality of education of medical schools actually in China? So with that being said, let's just get right to the video. I must say that every medical student in China has a story of how they came in China, and some stories are sad compared to others, and everyone's story is just totally different. And I must say I really came to China at a bad timing. When I was back home, I did do a lot of research. I am very big on research. I'm like in front of the internet always like that. So I did my research, and I just wanted to make sure that I go to a good school. It didn't have to be the best, but it had to be accredited, and that I was paying my money's worth since I'm not coming on scholarship. And I picked a school. The school was located in Beijing, and yeah, I feel as if me coming to China was a really bad timing. It was in 2014, that's when I was meant to come here, 2014 September. And if you guys remember really well, there was an Ebola crisis in some part of Africa, and because of that, it's kind of like hindered and rendered and altered my application process, and I had to wait for a long period of time. And eventually I found a school in Beijing, a school that I really liked, and I was so excited to go to. I was already late for the September intake. I applied for the March intake. They asked for my high school results and a lot of yada things going on. After handing out everything, I received an application letter that my application was successful and I should come as soon as possible. So I arrived here in February of 2015 in order to start the March intake of medical school. But as soon as I landed at the airport, this is what happened, you guys. This is so sad. My school came to pick me up, and while we were on the bus on our way to the university, my agent received a phone call. I think it was from the school, and they told him that they're not accepting any students, and there was a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot of miscommunication with China and like medical schools in China, I feel as if there's a lot of miscommunication, as well as the administration is not that good, so you kind of like rely on agents to get you here and to help you transfer or transmit the information to the school, because there's always a second party involved, or there's always a middleman involved while you're applying in China. Most of the time that is the case. We can't help it, that is how it is. And yeah, so the agent received the phone call. We were striked, we didn't know what to do. I called my parents. My dad told me to go back home. I had to take the next flight and just return home, and I didn't want to do that. And there was a school where I'm currently that had actually called me. I don't know how they found out about me, but then they did call me earlier on while I was still in my country, and I refused to come here because I didn't really like the place and I didn't really like the island. I don't really like hot temperatures. But eventually my agent called that same school and they accepted me, and that is how I ended up here. So with that being said, I did not choose this university. I was meant to go somewhere else, and I just ended up being here. But I do feel that it is God's grace and it's God's work, and God just permitted it. So here I am. So don't get me wrong, I am in an accredited school internationally and locally. It's recognized, and but it's not the best in terms of accommodating international students' needs, and that is very, very important. So with that being said, it is important that when you pick a school, you need to make sure that it is accredited, not just internationally but locally as well. And it is accredited by the Chinese government to teach MBBS in English. That is very important. MBBS is just Bachelor of Clinical Medicine and Surgery, and it should also be accredited by the World Medical Directory accredited school. World Medical Directory, I don't know, I'm not so sure. I'm gonna leave a link somewhere here, and I'll leave you guys a link down below. So you need to make sure of that when picking a medical school in China. I mean, you wouldn't want to spend years in a school only to find out when you graduate that it's not accredited internationally, and you cannot carry on with your medical career and you can't move forward, because that would be a waste of money, a waste of time, and most importantly a waste of energy. So do make sure that your school is accredited. Oh, and then one more thing, you should also check the medical school rankings as well. That is important. Ranking in China, because there are so many medical universities and so many universities in China. Just check what number your university ranks, as well as internationally what number your university ranks. So I think with that being said, I am done with number one. Let's shift to number two. I do not want this video to be really long. I'm going to try to make it as short as possible, but then give you all the crucial information that you guys need. The second thing I would like to address is my study methods and what I did to make the most of my studies. Although there are universities that teaches the MBBS program in Chinese, there are also quite a number of universities that teach it in English. I think the majority of universities teach the MBBS program in English, and my school was one of it. Although this was the case, there was still a lot of language barriers coming from the professor's side and the doctor's side and the lecturer side, whoever is teaching you side. Sometimes you would really see that this person knows that they know the knowledge and they want to pass it to you. Most of the time they wouldn't know how to pass on that knowledge because of the language barrier. And I also feel a tiny bit of winny reason would have to be because these professors and doctors, or most of the time it's not even professors, it's doctors. These doctors are just doctors, they're not professors, so they don't really know how to teach in order to pass on that acquired knowledge that they know. I don't know if that makes sense. No, let's forget about that part, okay? But it's so important. No, let's just forget about that part. To be frank with you, it was really hard for me to adjust to it. The first 2 years of medical school was really a little bit depressing for me, I must say. Not academically but mentally, and it also took a toll on my academics because I was having difficulties adjusting to the system, adjusting to the teaching methods, and adjusting to the culture as well. So I think it was like in my second year that I found a method that I incorporated throughout my medical school studies. And so I must say I arrived here in February and school had already started in September. So they had already finished the first semester, so I arrived a semester late, and I had to within a week I had to study all my anatomy and everything else they did throughout that semester, and made sure that I passed in order to carry on with the previous September intake. That was the thing that the school did for me. It was just a favor, and I'm still very grateful for it because there was no March intake in the school. There's only September intake, and there's still no March intake. So I kind of missed a semester and some basic knowledge, but thanks God I know them now. Thanks God it wasn't very important. It's not something that I cannot teach myself or something that I didn't know beforehand. So with that being said, I had to find a method that would work for me, and I had to have a system of how I would study throughout my medical schooling. I literally told myself that I would not only read and study what I'm being taught in class, but then I would also come back home, do research, read, watch videos, watch lectures from other international schools, from other schools, from anything that is out of China, in order to make sure that I do not miss any important knowledge and I do not miss any important points. So with that being said, YouTube was a really helpful. I watched Dr. Najib, Khan Academy, what else, Kaplan videos. I made sure I had the books, ebooks. I would also ask my friends back home what they do with each subject and what were their objectives and stuff like that, just to make sure that I do not miss anything. And I must tell you guys that it was really hard to do that because China really takes absenteeism very seriously. They do not like it when we absent. They do not allow us to be absent. We cannot just, which I find very weird. We're not allowed to be absent unless it's an emergency and unless it's serious. And I mean, I'm in university. I choose to be absent whenever I want to. If I don't come to class, it's none of your business. Why do you care? But anyways, yeah. So it was hard because of that. I had to just go to class just to be there because I wasn't really benefiting anything. I would say that I did a lot of self-studying, and throughout my medical school, most of the things I know, 80% or 75% of the things, the theoretical parts that I know, is because I taught myself that. But I don't think it's just medical schools in China. I feel as a medical school in general is all about self-studying. You need to self-discipline, and you need to push yourself literally, because no one is going to push you. But I feel as if in China it's a bit harder. You don't get that push because of the academic system and because of the syllabus and the way things are organized. You don't get the push from your academics, so you kind of have to push yourself. So most of the time I'll get home and I'm really exhausted, I'm really tired from doing nothing in class. It's really hard, guys, it's really hard. But medical school is hard in general. So, and if you guys are familiar with Dr. Najib's videos, you guys know that those videos are really long, really long, 6 hours, 5 hours. But I would really truly watch that because I prefer knowing everything from scratch and understanding every little knowledge instead of just surface knowledge. So it would really take time, but we got there. Eventually you do get there and you do make it. So you also have to, I spoke about self-discipline, self-teaching, self-thought, self-discipline, and you also have to have a good time management. You know, if you're working part-time, manage your time well. It's not impossible, it's possible. You know your limits, you know what you can do, you know what you cannot do, you know what you can take, you know what your brain cannot take, you know what study methods works for you. Stick to that. Do not copy other people's study methods, because along the way you do get lost, and no one wants that. Doing that would become really strenuous for me, and sometimes it would be really stressful. So I had to find a balance and have a social life. Sometimes I do find medical students that like sticking on their own, and they like being alone, focus on studying and studying and studying and studying. Guys, it's not all about studies. I love studying, we all want to get there, but it's not all about studies. You need to balance, especially when you're in a foreign country. You need to have a social life. That means going out with friends, hanging out with friends, foreign friends, not just Chinese friends, foreign friends, going to foreign restaurants, attending foreign social gatherings. This kind of helps because it reminds you of what your purpose and why you are in China, and it also reminds you that there are people out there like you and who go through the same things as you, and you guys can talk about your struggles and what you face as foreigners in China or as students in China, and it really helps a lot mentally. So I would do that. I created a balance with my social life as well as like my educational life or my academics. As you guys can tell from my videos on YouTube, I love traveling. I would travel a lot. I would go discover new places. So most of the time I would do it alone, because some of my friends had traveled and already went back home. But yeah, that's it. Moving on to number 3, the quality of education. Is it worth it, and what's the quality of education in China? So for those that do not know, I was doing my 2nd year of biomedical sciences degree back home in South Africa before I came to China to study medicine. And biomedicine is a science degree, clinical medicine is a health degree, and there isn't much that I can compare between the two. But I would say that doing biomedical sciences back home was more stressful compared to clinical sciences in China, and there are various reasons why. While doing biomedicine, besides attending classes, there was a lot that was going on. We had research, we had projects, we had assignments, we had labs, and we had loads and a lot of work to do. But doing clinical medicine in China, it's mostly just attending classes and lectures. We hardly have a lot of research or a lot of projects and assignments. You do get homeworks and assignments and projects, and of course you do go to labs. Labs are important, it's always there. But the experimental part of my biomedicine is doing lab works, doing research, doing a lot of writing research, preparing to write your thesis and stuff. And the experimental part of clinical medicine is getting exposed to not just labs in the lab classes, not just labs, but also getting exposed to patients in hospital. And unfortunately, that is what we lack here. So I would say that this is one of the disadvantages of studying medicine in China. You hardly get exposed to the clinical aspect or the clinical practice of it. Compared to my friends who were back home, they started, you start going to the hospital from 2nd year to 3rd year. You also start going to the hospital from 3rd year here in China, but it isn't the same, and I'm going to explain why. We would go to hospital from the 3rd year onwards, but the exposure wasn't enough, and I would say that this is the case because of the language barrier. So you would get patients who wouldn't know how to speak Mandarin. That is like not knowing how to speak English, but then they would speak the vernacular language or their local language, especially elderly patients. So it was a little bit hard for us to communicate with them. And even if you do communicate with them, some that do know how to speak Mandarin wouldn't be confident enough for you to allow you to touch them. And some supervisors or doctors or senior doctors wouldn't also be really confident enough to allow you to touch patients or to allow you to perform certain procedures or do certain like little stuff on patients, because I feel as if that's the case as well because of the doctor-patient relationship in China. It isn't one of the best ones. So in order to not get in trouble with some of the patients, or in order to not get blamed for certain things that may go wrong, even though you are in a teaching hospital, some doctors wouldn't just risk that and allow you to do certain stuff on a patient and allow you to do certain procedures. So because of that, we didn't do a lot of practicals, and we didn't get much practical work done in the second, third, fourth, fifth year. But now that I'm an intern, I must say that it is quite different, and it's totally different, but you still do get a lot of language. So if you want to conclude on the quality of education, you need to keep in mind that there is language barrier. I wouldn't say the quality of education is bad, but I wouldn't say it's the best in the world. But you do get people, and even in my school, a lot of so there are some students that have written the USMLE and have passed it. And I feel as if it depends on an individual and how they study, and just like any other medical school in the world, it all depends on an individual. It all depends on you. How do you study? How do you want to take your studies seriously? Or are you here for your studies, or do you want to do something else, or do you want to focus on something else? So with that being said, I wouldn't say the quality of education is a bad one. I would say it is okay, it is fine. It's just the practicals that we do not get that whole totality of it, and we do not benefit on 100% level. But is it worth it? Yes, it's worth it if you want to become a doctor, if this is what you want to do. And China is one of the places or the only place that you can come and study, or China is the only place that you can get your education from. Why not? Go for it. It all depends on you. With anything in life, whether you're in Harvard or whether you're in the least well-known school or the least well recognized medical school, everything and all the hard work depends on you. It all depends on how hard you work, and it depends on how serious you are. So I hope this answered most of you guys' questions, and if I left anything out, please do not hesitate to DM me on Instagram or any of my social handles, Snapchat, YouTube. You can DM me on YouTube too. Follow me on Instagram in order to get a more inside view of medical school in China or my internship here in China. If you are a new subscriber, please join the family, and if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing, or thank you so much for sticking with me, and I love you guys so much. And yeah, see you guys next time. Bye.